Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Before I get started, as you probably can tell, I am somewhere different and the sound is probably going to be kind of echoey for this video and maybe the next few videos, so I apologize. But we have officially moved. As you guys probably noticed, I was only putting out videos every other week for a little while, and I actually ended up missing 2 weeks in a row because my boyfriend and I were moving and I'd gotten a new job and it was a lot of crazy stuff happening and I just had to kind of reprioritize things. But we have officially finished moving. I'm waiting for some more furniture for my little studio office area in here, but this is where I'll be shooting my videos from now on. So the set behind me might be changing in the coming weeks. And after I get the remaining furniture and finish decorating my room, I'm hoping that will help with the balancing of the sound and everything. So again, I apologize if the audio in my future videos is a little bit weird and echoey. And with that being said, I plan on going back to my once a week videos now that my schedule has sort of become more consistent. We are done with the heavy parts of the move and now it's a little bit more back to normal. So I do plan on releasing videos once a week from here on out. And this video will actually be coming out on my 1 year anniversary of my What a Horror channel. So thank you guys so much for a year of YouTube. I do this just for fun and really just for myself. So it always excites me when people want to follow me and want to be involved. So I thank every single one of you who have subscribed and follow my Instagram. I'm really enjoying this and I hope you guys are too, and cheers to a full year. But for today's video, we are going to go down that 50 best horror movies you've never seen list. This movie is number 32 for us, but number 34 on the list is the movie May. May came out in 2002 and it was written and directed by Lucky McKee. This was his debut movie and he did go on to do a couple other films as well, but this was one of his more popular projects. And to give you a quick synopsis of the movie, it's about the character May, who has a lazy eye and throughout her childhood was sort of told by her mother the only way to make friends is to cover your eye. You don't want to show that you're different. She struggles to make friends, she gets made fun of a lot growing up, and she sort of finds solace in a doll her mother had made back when her mother was younger. And this doll, her name is Susie, she lives in a glass case, becomes May's real only true friend, the only person she can talk to and be herself. And her mom tells her, I always say, if you can't find a friend, you make one. Fast forward a couple years later to May in her mid-20s. She now works as a surgeon in a veterinary hospital. She's still socially awkward and pretty lonely. We see she lives by herself, still with just her doll, Susie. She does make her own clothes and sort of makes her own dolls, just like her mother used to. And she's a little bit quirky and kind of weird, definitely socially awkward. She doesn't know how to interact with people, and she still has that lazy eye, which does cause some confidence issues. But after going to her doctor and getting contacts that help correct her lazy eye, May has a new sense of pride and confidence and decides to start trying to pursue a boyfriend. And there's a mechanic that she sees on one of her lunch breaks named Adam, who she becomes super obsessed with. She thinks that his hands are like the most gorgeous part of his body. She loves that he works with his hands a lot. She just becomes completely infatuated with him and gets herself kind of gussied up and just shows up in places that Adam is, trying to get him to notice her. She walks by his table at the coffee shop a couple of times, and so it starts off kind of harmless like that. Adam does eventually notice her. They go on a few dates and he starts to kind of realize that she is quirky and weird, and he's sort of attracted to that until May takes it just a little step too far. After watching a homemade movie Adam made called Jack and Jill, where two people are on a date and then it turns into some cannibalistic ritual thing, May and Adam are making out after, and May ends up biting Adam's lip a little too hard to the point where he really starts to bleed. And she's like, well, I thought that's what you liked. I wanted to recreate your movie. And Adam was like, no, this is a little too weird for me. And he ends up just sort of distancing himself from May, which really, really upsets her. She's calling him, showing up at his house, and he's just totally not giving her any more attention, and she is not reading the signals. And as this is happening, Polly, who is May's lesbian co-worker, is also hitting on her, and May, just kind of distraught and upset with how things went through with Adam, ends up going to Polly for comfort. They kind of have a little bit of a date. Polly is very, very open with how she is attracted to May, but May's a little bit awkward, still not really sure this is what she wants. But Polly finds interest in another woman, and that also makes May super jealous. So May is now upset because she failed with her relationship with Adam. She kind of lost her opportunity with Polly, and Polly had even given May a cat, and the cat itself was also not giving May a lot of attention. So we start to see this build up in May as she is becoming more and more isolated and just desperate for human interaction. She really is only speaking to Susie. We hear her throughout the movie talking to Susie, almost as if Susie is alive and talking back to her, but it's kind of just a delusion in her head. Susie never speaks or moves in the movie. And May, who is volunteering at a school for deaf children, takes Susie to the school for the kids to meet her, but she doesn't take her out of the box. And the kids, being curious of what's in the glass box, and then she tells her it's a doll, they all start to try to open the box, and in the struggle, the box breaks and shatters. And the kids end up getting all cut up, and they end up breaking Susie, and May is just totally distraught. She has lost Adam, she's lost Polly, and now her lifelong only real friend Susie is broken into pieces. So May is kind of at this tipping point in life. And in her rage, May ends up killing the cat that Polly had given her. So she puts the cat in the freezer, sort of trying to figure out what to do with the body. She's sort of sulking around the city, just totally heartbroken and alone. And she is confronted by a guy on the street who invites her to get some candy with her. So they get candy and they go back to her place. And this guy, whose name in the movie is just blank, he finds the cat in the freezer and calls May a freak. And this is just the last straw. May completely snaps and ends up stabbing this kid in the head. And when he falls to the ground dead, May has this realization, going back to what her mother had said, if you can't find friends, make them. So then we see a sequence of May dressing herself up to resemble Susie, what Susie looked like. She has a dress, she does the makeup kind of like Susie, and she takes a cooler and starts going to her friends' houses. She first shows up at Polly's house, and she ends up slitting Polly's throat and taking her neck. And as she is harvesting Polly, Polly's girlfriend shows up, and she is kind of talking to May. She's being super rude because she just does not know what Polly sees in May. And May ends up killing her as well and takes her legs. May then goes over to Adam's house, and Adam is with his new girlfriend, so May kills both of them, and she takes the new girlfriend's ears, and she takes Adam's hands, which she had been obsessed with the whole movie. And when we get back to May's house, she is sewing together her creations. So the body and arms are of the guy blank who was at her apartment. The hands are Adam's, the ears are Adam's girlfriend. The head is sort of made out, it's almost like a scarecrow head. It looks like just a cloth that's stuffed with things, but the fur on the head is from the cat. The legs are Polly's girlfriend's, and then the neck collarbone area is Polly. And May is totally delusional. She's sewing together this creature, and she ends up naming it Amy because that is May rearranged. And she's proud of her creation, but still really distraught and lonely because it can't see her. So May goes over to the mirror and cuts out her lazy eye. And her rationale is if she gives this creature an eye, it will be able to see her. That's all she wants, is to be seen and loved by someone. So she puts the eye on the head of this creature. It obviously is just not doing anything because it's a bunch of body parts, and the eyeball kind of rolls off, and May is just super distraught. She's bleeding profusely out of her eye, kind of just in her dying moments. She's caressing and being held by this creature that she has made. And her last hallucination before the movie cuts to black, we see the hand of her creature, the hand of Adam, caressing May's face. This movie is definitely considered a psychological horror. As you can imagine, it's a lot about the human psyche and the loneliness that May is experiencing. It has a lot of Frankenstein elements to it. Obviously, the whole creating a creature made from different body parts thing, but just the loneliness and the self-deprivation that May has is very similar as well. And although this movie was not really received well in the box office, it also only had a very limited release. It was only released in 9 theaters within the US, and although the movie cost $1.7 million to make, it only grossed about $640,000 overall. So it did not even make back the money that it took to make the movie. But honestly, the critic reviews and just the general audience reviews were very positive for this movie. A lot of people really enjoyed it, so it was kind of weird that it didn't take off as much as you'd expect it to. And a lot of the forums that you read now even say that I'm surprised this isn't a movie more people talk about. So it has a huge cult following nowadays because it is such a good, kind of underappreciated horror movie. And a lot of people attribute the success of this movie to Angela Bass's performance. She is the woman who plays May. She also played Carrie in the TV movie adaptation of the Stephen King novel. But her performance in this movie is really what sells it, because this movie has some black comedy moments. It's definitely self-aware that some scenes are a little bit more ridiculous than others. There's some that are just genuinely awkward and kind of bizarre, and Angela was really good at portraying that. She knew how to take May's character and make her awkward, a little bit weird, sort of someone you might not want to be like around, but she also made her a character that you can love and sympathize and feel for. So there was this very delicate balance between being too over the top and weird and just right. And Angela really found that line, and I really think that's what sold this movie for what it is. A big part of this film is selling this idea that May is just pretty much kind of a normal person who has just been isolated for so long in her life that all she really wants is a friend. And that's something a lot of people can relate to, is that feeling of being lonely and just wanting to be seen and heard by someone else. And May just keeps getting rejected, and it's that buildup that you can feel and see, this dread and the anxiety that she has. And it makes you feel for her character even as you're watching her kill all these people. And the ending itself is also something that people think contributes to this movie being so successful, because it has almost like a slasher ending where she goes on this killing spree to collect her parts. And the build up to this was still sort of subtly creepy and scary, but not this like in your face. So it was this nice balance too of saving the really heavy gory stuff until the final moments, the kind of climax of the film. And saving it for that end part means that you leave the movie with those last few scenes in your head fresh as can be. And the last image is of this creature stroking May's face. You know that it's impossible for this to be happening because it's a bunch of dead body parts, but May is so delusional and just wants attention and love from someone so badly that she, as she lays there dying over her creature, thinks that she's being caressed and comforted by it. So it's just really a sad and upsetting story. You feel for May, even knowing what she had done to these people. And really, because there's little explanation, we truly don't know if May dies at the end of the movie. We still see her alive, smiling as Amy, her creature, is caressing her face. But that imagery is what really sells this movie for me, and what made this movie probably one of my top on the list for how scary and creepy it is. That last sort of imagery of this Frankenstein hand caressing her face, you know that it's not possible, but there's no real reason given as to why it's happening. It kind of leaves you with that little bit of uncertainty and just sort of like uneasy feeling. Like I said, Susie, the doll, never really talks, speaks, moves, or does anything. Her glass casing does crack a few times, but after May hits it, and you hear the sound of glass cracking, but you don't see it happening. So there's sort of this feeling of like, is there some sort of supernatural paranormal element to the film? And there just really isn't. It's all in the mind of May, and shows just how delusional and detached from reality she truly is. And honestly, there's not a ton of information about this movie. I searched a couple of different articles, and a lot of it's just sort of the same information regurgitated. There really isn't a lot of like fun facts or hidden things that I could find. I don't have the DVD, so there was no like behind the scenes features that I could really watch and try to get a better understanding of this film. But it really just seems like the kind of thing Lucky McGee he wanted to create as his debut horror film, and although it didn't really take off and McGee didn't do a ton of stuff afterwards, I'm really surprised because this movie, although the storytelling is different from what we've seen before, it's still compelling and creepy and leaves you with a lasting image. But it also came out around a time where these like low budget horror movies were sort of becoming popular. It was a thing to do. So I can understand why it probably got a little bit lost in the shuffle there, but anyone who watches it now really does seem to like it. It's got a huge cult following, and a lot of the reviews for this movie were genuinely positive. I think on Rotten Tomatoes it has like a 69%. And it was definitely a movie I was excited to rewatch. I do very much like this movie. I think it absolutely deserves its spot on movie list. It's a horror movie that if you haven't seen it, you really should, because it's just so real and unsettling in a way that you don't see a lot of other horror movies. I think it's because there is such little paranormal, supernatural things that happen until that very end scene. A lot of it could just be the delusion of a lonely person. And that's where I'll also give some credit to McKee as well, because it's hard to tell a story where there isn't anything supernatural, paranormal happening, where it's sort of just playing off the human psyche as is. It's hard to make that also kind of a compelling thing that people want to sit down and watch for 90 minutes. And he really did this. The pacing of this movie is really good. There are a little bit of points where you can't tell how much time has passed in between days. That gets a little bit confusing. But I mean, all in all, you assume it's probably been around about a month in the time that all of this takes place, because it ends on Halloween. And in the beginning of the movie, you do see decorations up in like the veterinary office. So you can only assume that it is taking place in October, probably over the course of like a few weeks. But yeah, I really don't have much more to say about this film. It's just one that I think you should absolutely go watch if you haven't. It's currently on Tubi, which is a free streaming service that you guys can go check this out. Highly recommend it if you have not seen it. It's a good psychological horror movie with a good amount of blood and gore, which I love. Which, speaking of, I think I probably would give this movie a gore-tesque rating. Mainly for those ending scenes when May really goes on her crazy killing spree to collect her parts. Before that, we did see a couple of other bloody parts, or just sort of disturbing moments. And May, working for the veterinary hospital, she tells Adam some pretty gruesome stories about things that she's seen. So not only the blood we see on the screen, but just the talking about gore in this movie is pretty successful as well. It's definitely not one of the bloodiest, like blood splattering the screen kind of movies, but it does have, for a psychological film, a good amount of gore. So I will give it that gore-tesque rating. But if you guys have seen this movie, I definitely want to know what you think. You can leave a comment down below or head over to my Instagram, What a Horror. I'll be making a post about this video as well. But as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more videos, because I put out new videos every Friday, and I will be back to that schedule now. And I'm really excited to have my studio space set up and to just be back at it. So thank you guys for sticking it out with me for the past month, but we are finally back to regular programming. So with that said, stay spooky.